Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and this is the podcast where I've covered every episode of the Sunbow cartoon, the G.I. Joe Extreme cartoon. We've covered the DIC, and I've walked you through every single issue of the Marvel Comics Real American Hero G.I. Joe run. And onwards and upwards, we've covered Action Force. We've covered our new segment, which is today's segment called You on Joe. We've covered your favorite things about G.I. Joe. We're covering all bases here. This 2024 is turning into a potpourri of trends this year. We've done Cold Slither, Behind the Rock, G.I. Columbo. It's all out there. It's all happening for you, Joe and Joe fans. Longtime listeners, thank you so much for listening. Newcomers, thank you so much for jumping on board the bandwagon. Today, I have a very special guest for you, longtime Joe heads. It's a guest from our peer. I can't even say peer because this podcast lives in the shadow of the What's on Joe Mind podcast. It's Mike Irizarry. So I can't bury that lead anymore, guys. We got Mike Irizarry from the What's on Joe Mind podcast. So make sure you give them some love while you're on the internet. And you're giving this show some love on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Throw me a follow. Throw me a hello at Joe on Joe Pod. You can send an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know if you want to be a guest on You on Joe. You on Joe literally is designed to get you guys, the listeners. If there's one specific thing about G.I. Joe that you love, a character, an issue, an arc, an episode, something like that's so intrinsic about G.I. Joe, like to your core, like the thing you're like, man, I really love sci-fi. Like that sci-fi is my guy. Let's talk about him. We'll dig into him. And that's what we're doing here today. We're covering Beachhead with Mike Irizarry. So I want you to be the guest on the show. So give me an email, send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com, and we will get you on the show. It's super easy, and it's going to be a lot of fun while you're online. Love for you to give us a rate and review, but I'd really also for you to love to give some love to our great sponsor, the Movies and a Meal podcast.
In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies and a Meal podcast. The Movies and a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews. They do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies and a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies and a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too.
Summer movie season is heating up, so they're going to have a lot of stuff to talk about. So make sure you do not miss an episode of their awesome podcast. They support the show. They help keep this show rolling. You can also help support the show if you go to patreon.com/JoeandJoePod, and you can join for as little as $1 a month, $3 a month, or you can be a sponsor and you help keep the doors afloat. The doors open and the boat afloat on Joe. And I appreciate each and every one of you that do support this show each and every month, in and out. Now, I have been pleasured to be a guest. That sounds really awkward. It has been my pleasure to be a guest on the What's on Joe Mind podcast as a guest host a few times over the recent few years. They're a awesome Tuesday night hang. If you're looking for some Joe content on a Tuesday, that's where everyone's at. Tuesday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern. That is 6 p.m. Pacific. 8 Central for you kids. Mountain, you can go screw yourself. I'm just kidding. It is a wonderful hang. It's a place to get together, talk about G.I. Joe, talk about the news of the week for G.I. Joe. And that show has been around for 13 years. It's spearheaded by Mike Irizarry, his brother Racktime Rob, the honcho Mark Weber, and of course G.I. Joe Colton, the fabulous hosts. You'll see, we talk about it on this episode. You'll see we'll talk about the history of that great show. And just in general, we talk about Mike. We get to know Mike because, he's a great dude. He loves G.I. Joe. He's got a wealth of knowledge about G.I. Joe, and most specifically, Beachhead. Mike has a massive Beachhead collection. That is all I'm going to say. I'll bury that lead for now. If you know anything about Mike, then we're talking Beachhead. And specifically, I want to big shout out to Mike, who in our G.I. Columbo episode played the role of General Hawk. So his big baritone voice. Those sweet, sweet pipes. And there's a sweet, sweet heart beating underneath it. So I hope you really enjoyed this conversation today. I sure did, haven't it? It's been a long time coming. He and I have danced around it for well over a year, and I kept forgetting to get him on. So now I can finally put that behind me and gladly welcome to this show, friend of the show, friend of this man, Mike Irizarry. Welcome to Joe on Joe. How long have you personally been hosting What's on Joe Mind, Mike?
It'll be 13 years for me. 13 years in a couple of weeks.
Oh, couple of weeks. Are you doing something to celebrate?
The show's anniversary is actually next week's show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I didn't show up till episode 3.
Okay.
So it's funny because like the first show I was on was released on my birthday, May 14th, back in 2011.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so so is the show then 13 years or just the 13 years since you've been on it?
Like next week is the 13 years of the show.
13 years of this show. And you've been a contributor for pretty much all that time.
Yes. How
long have you manned the captain's chair, as they like to say in Trekville?
Let's see. I've took over in the production chair since Gary walked away. And that would have been 2018.
It's like 6 years.
Yeah, it's late 2018.
Yeah. Well,
but yeah, like more than 5. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I hope to listen. One day.
Yeah, that's good. We appreciate that. Look, I can't get the hosts of the show to watch.
I think I might talk about your show more than they do.
You probably, in fairness, I used to tease Joe Colton about that mercilessly.
Mm-hmm.
And then right around the time where she was wrapping up to go on maternity leave, which she's still on, like she gave us like 3 months of nonstop promotion.
Oh, that's great.
I'm like, where was this the rest of the 6 years you were on the program?
That was hormones. That was just pregnant hormones. That's what that was. And now all that love is being thrown. Well, it's being all funneled into her new baby, is what it is. You've got some great co-hosts. So you've got your brother Rob, you've got the honcho, you've got Joe Colton. But the cool thing about What's on Joe Mind is you guys have had a rotating cast of characters over the years, and it seems like the show is the thing that endures, and you slide people in and out. What's that experience been like? Like when you were asked to take over, not to court any controversy if there is any, but has it been easy to slide people in and out, or like who's kind of the caretaker? I guess you're the caretaker now.
At this point, yeah, I am the unofficial historian. So for the longest time when it got started, it was Gary Godso, Greg Schuler, and a third gentleman who does not want his name spoken in association with our program.
Wow. Okay. Drama. Not asking.
Right. I mean, look, we can talk about it a little bit. That's fine.
We are recording.
That's fine. That's fine. And then after the first episode, the guest was Justin Bell of generalsjoes.com, and they all got along so well with Justin that they just decided he was on the show full time after that.
Okay.
So it was those four guys for the first couple of weeks. I was the substitute host. So when one of those four guys missed a show, I stepped in, and that happened for the first time on episode 3. And then I showed up sporadically for the first 4 or 5 months. And then something came up where Greg left the program. And so I took over Greg's chair. I became that chair.
Mm-hmm.
And then for a few years, that was the set. That was the four of us, right? It was Gary and Justin and myself and Redacted. And we got to a point where Redacted was, his contributions had stepped back. He was becoming look, we do silly comedy stuff and we're goofy and we laugh a lot.
Yeah.
But when we actually do report news, we try to be factual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we try to get it right the first time. And if we get it wrong, oh my God, do we apologize and try to correct and all that other good stuff. So our fourth host, Redacted, was getting into a run where he was just trying to be Mr. Hot Take.
Mm.
And we spoke to him about it. And I was like, hey, we're not really into that. It's great to have fun and all this stuff, but we don't want to be that kind of a show. Cause we were very early in the world of G.I. Joe podcasting.
Sure.
Not many other ones out there when we got started.
Yeah.
And so we had a pretty sizable following because we're for a long time the only act in town. And so we didn't want to do that kind of program. And so we spoke to him about it, and then he started showing up less and less and less.
Mm-hmm.
And we confronted him again. It was all very, very businesslike because we didn't have, we like him personally. To this day, we all still like the guy.
Right.
So we confronted and we were like, well, what kind of projects do you want to do, based on the channel? We'll treat it like maybe a second show, or because clearly he wasn't interested in doing the format that we had already, put into place, and never came up with anything. Just continued to duck out, not show up for recordings. Stopped for a long time. He was the guy who did a lot of the technical stuff. He did rundowns. He did bookings. He was a very important part of the program, and we owe a lot of the growth of the show to him.
Yeah.
But I don't want to make it sound like he was spare parts, right?
Right.
Like his contributions were important, and so as he backed away from those, Gary and Justin and I had to fill in those roles to where he had pretty well taken himself off the program. And then it got to a point where, we couldn't come to any kind of consensus on what his next steps were. And so we just went our separate ways. And that was difficult. And, again, he still doesn't want to be associated with us. So I'm going to refrain from his name. But it's, it's been a while. It's been some years now. We brought in Joe Colton to replace him, and she stepped right in. And the tenor of the humor was not past her, and she was enthusiastic and wanted to contribute and all that other good stuff. So we really didn't miss much of a beat since then.
Well, that's fascinating, and thank you for the oral history there. I've always thought of your show as a good hang, is what I think of it.
Right.
Whenever you guys have me on to guest, contribute. I can't even call it host, just to guest clown. It's about hanging out, making G.I. Joe. This is the way I approach it. And listen, we're on the air now. If you don't want me to do that, tell me now. Make G.I. Joe jokes and contribute a couple opinions on some new stuff. I think that's a lot of fun for me. I always enjoy that, and it seems like your audience enjoys it as well.
Right. We have long been our detractors, and they aren't necessarily wrong. But folks who complain to us say that we don't talk enough about G.I. Joe on our G.I. Joe show. And they kind of have a point. Look, they're not entirely wrong.
Well, tangents happen.
But if we're going to go out, and back in the days when we were doing audio only,
yeah,
our episodes were 3 and 4 hours long a pop.
Really?
Right? Yeah. Oh, they are marathon.
Whoa. And was it really G.I. Joe heavy, or did you take the kind of tangents you do now?
We take the kind of tangents we do now.
Okay. You kind of have to.
Right. So, but that's the thing. Like you've equated the show to being a good hang,
mm-hmm.
and part of being a good hang is not just being so aggressively into the subject matter that you're done talking about it after half an hour and you're tired and you want to go home.
Yeah,
like that's missing the point of the vibe that we try to throw out there. So,
and it's a way to get to know you guys as hosts, in a show not tell kind of way, right?
Right.
Because you're showing who you are by the things you're interested or knowledgeable about. You know, like your brother Ragtime Rob, who was a guest on Joe and Joe last year. You know, he's massively knowledgeable about comic books. I love talking not even non-G.I. Joe stuff. He's a massive comic book font of knowledge, you know, and through those conversations, it reveals a lot about him well beyond the G.I. Joe world, which I think's key.
Yeah, no, Rob is, he was kind of the accidental addition, right?
That's what your parents said.
Well, no, that happened later, right? Because Rob's the oldest. So if Rob was an accident, oh my God, the rest of it, like
you were just a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, we just missing all over the place. Like he's the oldest, and there were 4 of us, so it was a problem. No, but to continue the lineage talk, so the 4 of us, so it was Gary, Justin, Joe, and myself for a little while afterwards. Justin moved on to other things. Gary moved on to other things. And so we brought in Carson Metaxas of 3D Joe's for a while. And then right around the time where we started making the switch to video, Carson just had too much going on because he was laying the groundwork. He'd already started with his books and, was moving into this idea with his Operation Recall toys and stuff like it. He was already supremely busy, and he was just throwing more logs on the fire that were, for his well-being, and our 2-bit slime show is never going to make anybody rich. So we have to get out of the way when things like that get in the way. So after Carson left, we brought in, of course, Mark Weber, who had been subbing for Carson for a few months on the way, and that was right as we were moving to video. So a lot of the folks who tune in now, the folks who the video generation are unaware of the show's lineage before Mark Weber.
Yeah.
And then Joe Colton was around, and she's got some other irons in the fire as well. And so when she was not available, we would turn to Rob, because, like you said, I'm a pretty good comic guy. Like I have a decent well of comic book knowledge going back to the golden age, right? I am no slouch in the comic book department. But Ragtime Rob has forgotten more than I can converse with in that world. So if I'm going to be talking about a comic book heavy property, well, that's a pretty good dude to have, and I know he doesn't cost anything.
You know how to find him.
Right.
Yeah, completely agree.
He can't hide from me.
Man, whenever we chat, I'm not surprised anymore, but what's the word, like pleasantly, my heart, my cockles get warm whenever we have a comic chat, whenever the segues turn to a comic chat, because I know there's nothing that I can throw out that he won't get, and there's no obscure one joke that I'll throw out that no one in your audience will understand, but Rob will. And that makes me happy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that was a part of it too, and that we figured out that Mark Webber would be a good new host at the very last JoeCon.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah. And Honcho, now Honcho used to be with Hasbro, right? What was marketing?
Mark was the head of the G.I. Joe brand. He was the head of marketing for G.I. Joe.
Great.
And he had that job for about 18 months. It was towards the end of that Toys R Us run there, where he also worked on the Transformers team, and so he had a lot to do there. But G.I. Joe was essentially him and Daryl DePriest for those 18 months.
Wow.
And they still managed to get product on the shelves and new product. And, so it was really a credit to being able to weave something out of nothing.
That's amazing. And recently he picked up a job with.
Mark is the operations manager over at Volaverse.
Right.
So
that's what it was.
His old partner at Hasbro, Bobby Vala, who was one of the designers who worked on the Joe team, and others. Really at Hasbro, Bobby did mostly Marvel Legends, and then after Mark was released, we'll use the sports term.
Sure.
Bobby was briefly the head of G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe brand himself. Again, less than a year before he was shown the door. Lots of talented people have been let go from that company. It amazes me how they continue to just chug on. Kudos to Lenny Panzeca, who's the lead designer now. Because Rob and I were talking about it the other day, that it's weird when we get a classified figure that is just average.
Right.
Like, there's no real bad classified figure.
There really isn't.
It's just like when one is not superb, it sticks out. Like that's a real credit to that team and how they've managed to just keep going in the face of just an overwhelming wave of corporate bullshit.
Well, so, I think part of that, I don't mean this to take anything away from them, because I do think they do a wonderful job with it, is I think the G.I. Joe fans are so hungry for quality product that they buy it, the HasLabs fund, the all the pre-releases, they always sell out on Pulse, like this stuff doesn't sit on the shelves. You get an occasional peg warmer or, Ross product, but for the most part, this stuff moves, and it moves really well. And I think that's got to be inspiring for that team. It's also got to put, buoy their sales a little bit within corporate to show, this is a product line that people support. So let's give some support to the people doing it.
Yeah. And I think too, there's a lot of bleed over for classified currently from folks who are collecting Marvel Legends and are maybe getting tired of getting the same 6 or 7 characters in every wave.
Right.
And a lot of folks who are Star Wars Black, and that product has really slowed down.
Star Wars,
so
I'm not a massive Star Wars expert, but I can't imagine what is left to do in Star Wars Black. Like what?
You got me, man.
Yeah, like and simply because they've been doing it forever, and they've been doing a lot of them. I think there's a huge untapped potential with characters still to go for classified. So I'm really excited about the future of that. I hope and I know they're finally actually putting out actual Dreadnoks, but I just hope I want to see a bigger focus on Dreadnoks. That would be my one complaint.
Well, I mean,
and they're starting to put him out.
Yeah, Naugahyde is coming. Excuse me. We've got Road Pig on deck somewhere. So we're at a point where those are almost the only named Cobras left.
Right.
So, yeah, I think Dreadnoks are coming.
Good. I like it. I like it. Now, you're the tendril. You're the octopus that connects all these tendrils, You are you're the linchpin around it. What's your G.I. Joe origin story?
Oh, well, I mean, in 1982, I was 7 years old, so that I was exactly who they were trying to get.
Yeah.
They hit the mark. And yeah, the rest is just kind of history.
Do you remember your first character?
The first figure I have,
Yeah.
Stalker.
Yeah.
Stalker, and I got a Cobra officer. That was right on the heels of Rob taking money from his paper route and going to the local Woolworths and buying Snake Eyes, Flash, and a Cobra Soldier. And so between the two of us in those first couple of weeks, we had a decent little squad going.
That's pretty good. So he technically got there first, and you saw it and were like, I'm in.
He did, yeah. Rob was when we were kids, he had a paper route.
Oh, that makes all the difference.
Yeah, it kept him reasonably affluent in Child World, and me too, because every 6 weeks or so he would just he'd get busy with stuff, or the folks would just want to make sure he wasn't letting school slide, and so they would make me do it for a week, and they'd let me get paid for that week.
Sure.
So we had a little spending cash.
Oh man, I remember. I think it was like you'd collect the money once a month, I believe. And
right.
You were it was Flush City then. I was like, I'm hitting the comic book shop tomorrow. I have $24. Like, that's it. Get out of my way.
At a time when comic books were
75
cents.
Yeah, they were 75 cents when I started collecting. My first over dollar books were Marvel Comics Presents and Excalibur. Were they both $1.25 or $1.50? Where's Rack Time?
Maybe.
He would know exactly that. But whatever, yeah, I they were either $1.25 or $1.50. But they were my first over dollar regular books, and I remember being like, oh, okay. It's a risk, but I'll take it. What about G.I. Joe did you love the most? Was it the figures, like toys, or was it did you get into the cartoon? Did you ever get into the comic book?
The comic book was really the first step in it. We used to go to church on Sunday, and next to that was a small convenience store, and we would stop in to buy the newspaper with my dad after mass, and they of course had a comic rack, so that was where when we weren't hitting the local comic shop, which was before it moved to where it was only 2 blocks away. This was the best time we had to get comic books.
You live 2 blocks away from your comic shop?
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a second.
Oh, boy.
So this post church run was always where we would invade the comic racks, and Rob pulled off G.I. Joe number 5. So that episode where they've got the Mobat rolling through the disguised Cobra parade.
Yes, that's a great.
It was our first exposure to G.I. Joe. We kind of laughed about G.I. Joe before that, because we saw the commercials on TV and we're just like, that's just kind of a dumb name for Army guys, right? Like, we just we didn't understand what was going on. We didn't really know about the stuff from the 60s at that point.
So you got the comic before you got those figures you were talking about earlier?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So you read that and it fleshed out a world for you.
Right. It's like, hey, these are pretty cool. Then we got to seeing those figures. And, we were Star Wars kids before that. And we saw the extra posability.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, oh, man, these are pretty good. We may have to do an about face on this one. So we did.
Smart.
I don't think I got another Star Wars toy again. I think I was really that done. I was that over Star Wars at that exact moment as a toy. Like, I love the movies, don't get me wrong, but sure. I don't care about the toys. I'm not sure why that just died as quickly as it did. Don't think I played with them again.
Did you get into the vehicles a lot?
Yeah, we again, it helps when you have a sibling that's close to you in age. We, like, our folks would double up the small vehicles for us. Like, we both had a Skyhawk, for example.
Yeah.
But as far as the big vehicles went, it meant they could buy, some for Rob and some for me, and we were pretty good about letting one another play with one another's stuff, and call it a day. So I think the fact that the two of us were reasonably close in age helped our G.I. Joe collection a lot.
How much older is Rob than you?
He's 2 years.
2 years. Do you think that this may be an obvious answer, but do you think G.I. Joe helped bring you guys, because you guys are pretty close now? You seem to get along pretty well. I don't want to get too into your personal situation, but you guys seem to be pretty good as brothers. Do you think G.I. Joe helped in that?
It didn't hurt. I don't think we were in bad shape before that.
Mm-hmm.
So he's and I don't want to sound like I'm going too mushy, but like Rob is legitimately one of the nicest people on the planet Earth.
Oh, it's great.
Like, he really is. Like I'm not a bad person. I don't want to make it sound like I'm just this screw up. But, I do okay, but my God, that man he's
a school teacher. He teaches them kids.
Yeah, he's an absolute mensch. It's easy. If that's your older brother,
mm-hmm.
You're just not going to have older brother problems. We didn't have a whole lot of physical fights. He wasn't the type. He was a little bossy because he's an older brother, but he wasn't the type that he was a good student and well behaved, and I was more of a normal kid. Like, I was also a good student, but I caught that whole thing growing up where it's like, oh well, why aren't you more like your brother? Blah blah blah.
Sure.
So I hate that, and like, it never came from him. So even though Rob is this paragon of virtue that I'm being unfairly, graded against for most of my younger years by institutions of learning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it didn't come from him, so it never really affected our relationship. Like, it was just like, fine, okay, that's their problem.
That's great. So it's not exactly a Duke Falcon situation.
No, that's really more me and my younger brother.
Oh, okay.
Again, Rob is great. He's one of the nicest people on the planet Earth. And so my little brother kind of did the, trying to wedge me out of the picture deal, which again was fine. I was more social than Rob was, so I would go hang out with friends and things sometimes.
He would always bring dates around to look at your top secret government installations.
Sure. Right. So I think Jimmy tried to do the whole, well, let's just pretend Mike doesn't live here anymore thing.
Sure. Families are complicated.
He and I today are very similar.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it now, but it was kind of frustrating then. There was one time with Jimmy, all three of us back when we lived in New York growing up, we shared a room. And there was one day where I got up early, left the house, left word with Mom, hey, I'm heading out to my friend's, I think it was my friend Steven. I'll be back for dinner time, because it was the 80s and that's what we did back then.
Sure.
Sometime around noon, as the story goes, Jimmy was rooting around in the closet, and something fell off of a shelf in the closet and bonked him on the head. And he ran screaming downstairs, saying that I had done this to him,
mm-hmm.
because it was some kind of toy of mine.
Got it.
And so he just decided that this meant that I did this to him.
Trap.
Right.
Yeah, a Home Alone-esque trap.
Somewhere on the other side of town.
Yeah.
I rode back on my bicycle, teleporting distances along the way, like Nightcrawler of the X-Men, and then just hit him with a die-cast car, and then just boom back to Steven's house. And so my mom, for the rest of the day, was just fuming. Just was like, "Why'd I find him?" Blah blah blah. And I came home, and she yelled at me so loud, my hair was parted different. To which I'm just standing there looking at her, go, I wasn't here. I told you when I left that I was going to be gone all day. I don't know what you're talking about. I remember just there are these moments when you're a kid that you remember talking to your parents like you're an adult,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
you have them dead to rights.
For sure.
And this is one of those moments for me. And so that riot act was then turned about 90 degrees to Jimmy's part of the room, and I just left. I had nothing else to say there. Because I like even if the punishment had come down, it would be one of those things where I would have fought it and not paid attention to it. It was big family on Long Island.
I was just gonna say, what part of New York? Long Island?
Yeah, Nassau County.
Nassau
South
County.
Shore. Baldwin.
When did you leave?
Late 80s, right before I started middle school.
And is that when you landed in Indiana?
It is.
How was that? Because I know Indiana pretty well.
Right, especially late 80s Indianapolis.
Yeah, a good friend of mine lives in Long Island. Shout out Brian Morrissey. So he's telling us about how that is. Those are two different worlds.
Yeah, you don't know the half of it, brother. The thing about growing up around New York is that New York is kind of the center of the universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
If not Los Angeles, it's New York, and so at least half of the world that you see on TV and read about in the newspaper is happening within a 2-hour train ride of where you're at.
Yeah,
and you get used to that, and you don't even notice it until you're not in that situation anymore. And Indianapolis, it's a nice place. I don't want to take away from it.
Yeah. But
especially 30 odd years ago was the middle of nowhere. It was right at the Indianapolis kind of hit a boom in the beginning part of the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was right at the beginning part of that arc. And it's not as bad today.
They did hit a boom, actually. I know what you're talking about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They're kind of hitting another one.
I remember that in like the early 90s. Yeah, I remember that being a thing, that Indianapolis was like the up and coming, like, they're getting their act together. I do remember that, actually. And they're having another one now?
Yeah, we're something of a Midwestern tech hub these days.
Oh.
There's a lot of tech companies.
That's exciting.
I guess it means that they're building a lot of like luxury apartments that I can't afford to live in town.
Yep. That's
and so it's getting real expensive to live here now.
That's the tail of the tape. That's not supposed to happen.
No, well, like
trade-off.
It's fine if you want to build nice apartments and nice places for people to live.
Mm-hmm.
But it's something else when you price out everybody that already lives in the town.
I agree.
Right? Like there are, we live on the north side where there's traditionally a lot of money. I don't have it, but there are people up here that do. And like there are restaurants and shops and things like that can't find help because nobody can afford to live here and work there.
Mm.
So like, why would you drive an hour to get here?
Right.
To get paid even $15, $16, $17 an hour, even if you're getting paid okay by that standard, it's still not enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's nowhere affordable for people to live. So like everybody's trying to max out their dollar with these high-end living spaces without thinking, I should probably just build some nice medium rent places and probably make just as much of a killing.
It's like a game of Sim City. Did you ever play that coming up?
Yeah.
And the little warning sign would flash like, you have too much industry, or you have too much shopping centers, not enough living places, things like that.
Yeah.
Like there's all these warning signs going on in every major city across the country. And there's no one with their finger on the mouse going, we need to adjust.
Yeah, well, I mean, every big business anymore is just about maximizing their margins,
Sure. Yeah.
and that's the true trickle down economics, right?
Yeah. Well, everyone wants to go public because they want that money without consideration for the actual health of the actual business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really I don't understand how this is supposed to continue to work.
Well, listen, the good news is none of that affects G.I. Joe.
I mean, when I start having to spend all my money on rent and not G.I.
Well, I
Joe,
guess
it
so.
kind of
I guess in
affects
the world of G.I. Joe, when we live in the world, I guess it does. But
in the canon of
G.I.
G.I.
in the
Joe.
canon, yeah, that's the word. That's the word that was eluding me. At we're talking the canon of G.I. Joe. It could be whatever they want. So, half hour into this conversation, we're here to talk about Beachhead.
Sure,
if you are legendarily known around the globe, Mike.
I don't know about legendarily. We only have 1,400 subscribers on YouTube.
You don't
I
have
don't know
to
about
tell.
legendary.
You don't have to tell that. This isn't a Milton Berle contest, but you have a massive collection of Beachhead action figures.
Yeah, specifically the 1986
Yes,
version.
yeah. I mean, the only one that matters, really. I know because I was guesting on your show last week. I hope to listen one day. But what number?
You're forgiven for not listening to that one because Lord knows we went for almost 3 hours. It was just the three of us.
Well, to be fair, I'm usually editing my show on Tuesday nights, so. To be fair, that is actually something I'm usually up to.
We did blame the extra length of the show entirely on you.
100%, man. Listen, no one tangents more than me. That's why most of my shows are solo, so I don't have to tangent. I will tangent. How many Beachheads do you have right now?
As of right this second, in hand, 153.
Oh, you got one more since last week.
Yeah. Look, last year was a good year for the collection. I'd say last year leading into January.
Mm-hmm.
And then starting this January, for whatever reason, everybody on online and on eBay and what have you, they all decided that G.I. Joe needed to take about a 20% jump.
Oh, really?
And so I haven't bought nearly as many since January. Because I'm a very principled buyer.
Right.
Right.
I mean, when you're doing that, when you're army building one dude, you kind of have to be. There's really no reason to go overboard,
Right.
There's no gold-plated Beachhead that's going to scream for you.
Yeah, I'm going to tell everybody out there that is looking to purchase one of these figures, I encourage it. Like everybody's like, anytime somebody buys one of those 86 Beachheads, I always have to get the message, oh, well, he got one. Are you mad? No, not at all. Look, Beachhead was released in 1986. He was sold through 1987. Those are the two biggest sales years of the vintage 3 3/4 G.I. Joe line. So I would reckon to say that there are more Beachheads out there than perhaps any other character, save the Cobra Trooper from 1982 to 1985. Simply because they sold that bastard for 4 years.
Do you have any idea how many they manufactured? Have you ever looked in? Or is there any? I don't even know if there's any way to research that.
I don't think those figures are out there for the public to consume.
Mm-hmm. Well, you got the honcho there. He never looked. He never peeked under the hood.
I mean, I'm sure that was an option, but they kept him busy.
Yeah. Do you remember your first Beachhead?
I mean, I got him in 1986.
Yeah. But do you remember like the moment you were like, "Hey, buddy, what's up?"
The stupid part of it is, I remember the first one I bought, and it was the one that's in Rob's collection.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Rob's birthday is in February, and in 1986, I was out with my grandma roaming the mall, and there were the new Joes on the pegs, and there was a pretty big difference in the presentation in 1986. That was the year that they went to the digital explosion in the background. It was the year they went to that 3D block logo
Yep.
on the top of the cards. It was the year that the file cards themselves went from manila tan to gray.
Yep.
So it was like it was a little jarring to see the new Joes. But Rob's birthday was coming up. I had a few dollars in my pocket, and so I bought him Sci-Fi and Beachhead.
Awesome.
So I remember that. I honestly don't remember getting the one from my youth in any particular moment.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, when I was a kid, he was one of my favorites, but he wasn't the guy. Like Beachhead's a character that I've grown more affinity to as I've gotten older,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just, oh, this is my, like, if we're just looking at, oh, this is my dude when I was a kid, that's Flash.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I was there in 1982. He was my favorite that year. And like that was my favorite. And there's some other guys who kind of got on that pedestal with him. Footloose is a favorite of mine. Mutt is a favorite of mine. Beachhead's on that list. You know, he was there. He was one of the guys that I was, when Rob and I would get together, I was always Beachhead. It was always one of the guys in my squad. So, you know, there was an affinity, but he wasn't the guy. And
if I may venture a guess, as you got older and your patience with other humans shortened, you grew an affinity to Beachhead.
a little bit. One of the things I always liked about him actually was his file card.
Yeah.
There was a lot on his file card that made sense to me.
Real quick, don't open it if you have it. Do you have it in front of you at all?
What?
His file card?
No.
Okay, good. But so finish that thought, because I got a little trivia question. I got some trivia questions for you. I'm going to test you about your Beachhead knowledge. So I just wanted to make sure you weren't looking at it. But yeah, so what about his file had spoke to you?
But, you know, and it was just one of those where it talks at the end where most folks get mad or at least get irritable.
Yeah.
Beachhead just doesn't. He's always in control emotionally. And that was just something that made a lot of sense to me as far as being something that I should maybe strive to do.
Fury impairs judgment and makes you careless. The results of anger are totally unacceptable to Beachhead. He doesn't get angry. He gets even.
Right. And I was not so much sold on getting even. But you know, the rest of that made a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's funny, though. I will say that the part about him not getting irritable, that they threw that out of the window when it came to the show. He got pretty irritated.
There were some moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the way we remember it's a little overblown. There's some very specific moments. But Beachhead was often like he was the straight man in a much more comedy influenced troupe.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Like
100%.
That 1986 run on Sunbow, there were a lot more, you know, kooky kind of characters like Wetsuit and Leatherneck were this, you know, weird punching machine.
They were so great.
Right. Shipwreck was played more for comedy. You know, everybody was kind of an oddball from that 1986 run. And Beachhead was the guy that wasn't.
Yep.
But at the same time, if you go back and watch those episodes, he's really not mad that often.
I think you're right. I think my biggest impression of him is from the movie. I think that's where he makes the biggest mental imprint.
Right.
You know,
like
and in the movie he's just angry.
Yeah, he's the trainer and they're really playing up that Full Metal Jacket Marley Ermey.
Totally. He's so angry in that show.
You know, but what always hits me about Beachhead in the cartoons, if you're watching the episodes, is how often he's generally right.
Oh yeah.
And they just ignore him, and then he's left to kind of mop up the mess afterwards. Like he's never the hero. We never get a Beachhead spotlight episode or anything like that. He's on a lot of the episodes, but we don't get to know a lot about him personally.
Yeah.
But if you just listen to him in some of these episodes, he's generally pretty astute.
Voiced by the great William Calloway. Have you ever had a chance to meet him?
I have not. I have reached out to him for the show, but I don't know what his health situation is. I'm guessing at this point it's probably not that good. He's probably quite advanced in years.
Yeah, from IMDb, born in 1940. Am I seeing that? Yeah, born actually March 11th. Just celebrated a birthday, so that'd make him 84.
Yeah, happy birthday, Bill, if you're still around.
Yeah, happy birthday, Bill. Well, he's still with us as of this recording.
As far as what's been reported, sure, yes.
Sure, that's true.
But again, I have reached out to his agency. I've reached out to whatever contact I could try to establish. I've reached out and I've never heard back. So,
well, he did a great job. Like he brought a real. Obviously, I think all the voice actors did great, character work. But there was something about between just his accent and the tenor. It placed Beachhead in a very specific place in people's, at least in my mind. It just really identified Beachhead. I can hear it in my head right now.
I'm sure he was just happy to not be playing a character that was as boring as Aquaman on Super Friends.
Oh, he did Aquaman.
He was Aquaman on Super Friends.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah. I mean, anything, right?
Yeah, that 86 cast, man, it was really a cartoon voice all-star team.
Oh, he was clumsy Smurf. I used to watch this. I love the Smurfs. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's one of the Hanna-Barbarians. He's one of the legends.
Oh, he played Angel. Oh, he also did Wolverine, Angel and Wolverine on Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. That one, that X-Men flashback episode, which was great.
Spider-Man wasn't that Australian Wolverine?
No, that was the Pride of the X-Men. Oh, okay. I don't think he was Australian on Spider-Man, but the Pride of the X-Men is the famous Australian one, where it was totally Australian. I think on Spider-Man he was just gruff.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, he only had a couple of lines, and one of them was notably asking if they wanted hey mate, you want a piece of fruit?
Maybe it was. Yeah, I mean, I know for a fact, Pride of the X-Men, he was super Australian.
I just got done watching the 90s X-Men, and I did not watch Pride of the X-Men.
Pride of the X-Men is really good. I've always enjoyed that. That's Sunville, I want to say.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, they did a really great job with that. And I remember when we were kids, that would always be it would air in that like Marvel Action Hour, like because obviously it was just a pilot, but they knew it was very good. So every few months they would show it, and you'd see a commercial for it. So you had to catch it that day until you caught it on a VCR.
Right.
And then they eventually put a VHS out, and I snapped that up. I think I was in college when I bought that because I was fascinated by that cartoon that never was.
Right, that version.
Yeah, that version of it. Yeah, because it's the Byrne era, which I was just in love with.
Right.
So you're in love with Beachhead. I've got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
We're going to test your Beachhead knowledge.
Okay.
If they're too insultingly easy, don't hate me. But I know there's a few we're going to start getting you warmed up with.
Okay.
Don't look at anything. Well, obviously, what's his hometown?
He's from Auburn, Alabama. That's
correct, of course. Now,
he is a Go Tigers kind of guy.
Yeah. His they all had grades, pay grades. From his original file card, do you remember what his grade was?
He was E6.
He was. All right, now we're going to get a little bit trickier. Do you remember what the name of the gun that he carried was? Like the type of gun. Just the nickname is fine.
Okay, that it's the Wasp.
Yes. An XF7 Wasp.
Yeah, I wasn't going to give you the XF7, but it is the Wasp.
That's great. I don't ever remember having the word Wasp in my head, and I absolutely should have, because that's a great name.
Yeah, I can't say that I would have known that as a kid.
Yeah.
But it's something that I've picked up through the years somewhere.
So his in his original production, there were a couple different versions of it. And I'm not talking about like V2 versions. There were just of the original Beachhead. What were the two versions, and what was the difference between them? Do you know?
Oh, wow. No, I don't.
One of them, his ammo pack, when they first manufactured it, was made with a more brittle plastic, and it was breaking a lot. So they did a rebuild, and they put him out with softer plastic.
Okay. I don't know if that counts, but sure.
I mean,
I feel like I was trapped on that one.
I feel like I got that straight from, where did I get that from?
Probably yojo.com.
It probably was. No, I looked up something earlier. Maybe yojo.com. No, I saw it somewhere else. Haha, I researched. I never do that for my show. Finally, what were his original... there were three names that were considered for him. Oh, I know where I got this from. I got this from Mark Bellomo. That's exactly where I got it from. I got it from Mark Bellomo's G.I. Joe hardcover book.
Gotcha.
That's where I got the ammo pack thing. And in that book, he lists three names that they considered for Beachhead before they landed on Beachhead.
Oh, I don't remember them. I've read it. I have Mark's book, but I don't remember them.
Cool. Ambush, which obviously great name, used later.
Right. Got used later.
And do you remember the third at all? It's a crazy name. It's actually a name they used. If Racktime were here, we'd say it was a name from Infinity Inc. But do you remember that? It's a crazy name. It's definitely more of a Cobra name.
I got nothing.
Mr. Bones. Right?
Okay. Sure.
Right? Cool doesn't work in any world. That just doesn't work for it's not a name. Ambush, obviously great name. They end up using it. Give him a nice mustache. But Mr. Bones.
A little rough, man.
That's got to be the name of your head range viper.
Right.
You do
somebody.
Yeah, you do a specialty range viper, and he's the head of the squadron, and he's called Mr. Bones.
Right. Probably just so they went away from that one, so they wouldn't have to put a skull tampo on his mask.
Yeah. Well, you did well. For Wayne Sneeden. Your knowledge on Wayne Sneeden. I wasn't even going to ask you what his real name is. I'm sure you know Wayne Sneeden. No one forgets a Wayne R. Sneeden. I learned something new as I was setting this show up. Looking on 3djoes.com, did you ever put his ammo bag on the backpack like they have there on 3djoes.com?
I do now.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah, it fits wonderfully.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I had a little plastic thing of like little drawers, almost like a sewing supply thing, and so his little ammo bag just stayed in the drawer.
I would always just put it on his shoulder and assume that it was supposed to be like a purse.
Yeah, I got sick of it, so I put it in the
little
drawer, and it stayed in its little home.
Mine might have been one of the ones that broke. I don't recall off the top of my head, but I feel like I have a broken one. But seeing it hooked over the backpack like it does looks so good and really pops.
That is how they are displayed when they are displayed in my home.
Yeah, that's great. I also never knew that that's a beret on his shoulder at all until I saw the classified version.
Right.
Did you know, as an adult, you probably figured out, but did you ever have an inkling that was supposed to be a beret when you were a kid?
Not really, no. It's something that you just kind of figure out as you go along. It's like, oh, well, I guess that's a beret up there. Because, when you're a kid, you just...
Yeah, I think I thought it was rope or something.
Right, let's just load up. Let's get on the Havoc and go.
Yeah, I think I thought it was rope.
Like Scarlett's got that random, quilted pad up there for whatever reason, something like that, right?
Yeah. When they put the classified out, and like he was in like the digital renders or whatever in the images, I remember saying to my friends like Paul and Jeremiah, like, why does he have a beret? They laughed at me. They're like, his original one did. I'm like, what
Right.
are you talking about? He didn't have a beret.
Yeah, it was just on his shoulder.
Yeah, but I don't ever. Do we? Did we ever see it? It was never animated that way, right?
No,
It was like never
there,
drawn
there
that
were
way.
there were a couple of occasions where you saw Beachhead without his mask.
Oh
but,
yeah, I remember that.
he
Shocking.
never looked the same. There were
No.
a couple episodes he looked totally different in those episodes.
Wasn't one of them? They went on a date.
No,
No.
the ones I'm thinking of, there's a scene in Arise Serpentor Arise where he's got it rolled up, like a cap, like Lowlight has, right?
Oh, that's cool.
And you see his face, and he's got black hair, and he's real squared, he's real chiseled.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he looks like a guy who's the trainer
Yeah.
of an elite force of soldiers. And then in that one where Shipwreck gets a hold of the MacGuffin device and it's all cartoony and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you see him without his mask there, but it's real. He's real generic. He's just some dude with brown hair.
Got it. What is that thing on his backpack? The rocket looking thing.
You mean on the bottom of the pack?
It's on the side, and it's
On the
attached to like an accordion on the bottom of the pack.
Let me grab one of
Is that an actual rocket launcher? Like a little mini portable rocket?
I am taking. I one of the more recent purchases I have. This guy included a resealable package, like a custom package, to put the Beachhead in. I did not pay extra for this.
Awesome.
And it was an absolute steal to begin with. So
I
There
like
are good-
those.
there are good people in the world.
Yeah, I forget who it was. I had a guest recently. They were showing me one of the figures where it's like they make someone custom makes where it's the explosion background, and then in the center of it is a space, so it's like a file card, but it's obviously not a file card. But it's for displaying your Joes in like a showcase way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Those look really, really good.
But that thing on the side, looking at it, it looks like it's just a place where a grappling hook is attached.
Oh, do you think that's and those are
I think
ropes.
it's-
You're right.
Right. And the rope connects to the bottom. He can spool
That is
off what he needs.
exactly what it is. That is rope. Okay, that's something we learned here, folks. That is exactly what it is. It's like a rappelling hook with rope wrapped around the bottom of his backpack, and then he's got a crossbow with some bolts and stuff. Okay, mystery solved. All these years. The other side looks like just regular pouches, maybe a canteen.
Got to store some stuff. You got some MREs.
Yeah. We're down with the pouches. He was
Maybe-
pouches before pouches were cool.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome. What's your goal for Beachhead? Like, do you have an end game? Do you want to hit 200? Do you want to just keep doing it? Do you want to hit 200 by the end of the year? You know what I mean? Like, do you have any milestones, or is it just catch as catch can?
I think it's just catch as catch can, right? Because we're at a point now where again, I think the price on some of these figures is going to go back down a little bit to at least what it was before.
Yeah.
As we get into convention season.
Right.
Because I can tell you, having been to a convention, having been to Kentuckiana in January, those figures, I was paying half of what you see them online for. And that was 3 months ago. So I'm certainly not going to be like, there's folks out there asking for like a complete Beachhead in good shape.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking for $75.
Woo.
That's crazy. That's
Whoa.
just not a $75 figure.
Right.
I don't care what condition he's in. It's not. There's too many of them out there. I think folks panic and lose control of exactly how many of these toys were made. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm a sucker though for this stuff. I'm much better pricing wise with comics because I'm a lot more knowledgeable about them. But I tend to get my figures, my classic ones, like more by my heart. Like I'll go, oh man, I just really want them. That's a good one. Okay. So I might be that sucker. I've already had my Beachhead, but I might be that sucker overspending on a few of these.
Maybe. I think that's what, again, everybody's trying to maximize their margin.
Sure, I get it.
So they're trying to get the one guy who's like, oh yeah, I had that one when I was a kid. And they just want to buy one and be done with it, right?
Mhm.
They're not.
Yeah, that's more
catering
my
to-
jam. Yeah.
And so I get it, but at the same time, it's annoying. It's like I said, I have a line that I've never crossed. In 153 of these purchases, there is a price line that I have not
not going to ask you what it
crossed.
was. I'm not going to ask you what it is.
I'm not going to tell you what it is
Good.
because I don't want people to know.
Good.
I'm not upset when other people manage to buy these figures.
Have you ever sent like Rob in to haggle down a price and then reveal, haha, it's me, Mike? You know what I mean? Like done some kind of Parent Trap thing with buying a beachhead?
No, because that would imply that people know who I am.
Hey, man, you're the host of a very popular G.I. Joe podcast, long-running G.I. Joe podcast. What's on Joe mind?
Long running is accurate, but popular.
It is very popular. Listeners, if you're not already a subscriber, do them a favor. Click subscribe on YouTube. Correct? That's your favorite place to be.
That is our main jam these days. Yes.
Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. You've already gone to YouTube to look at my new Draw with Joe segment. You've already done that, guys. So go over to What's on Joe Mind on YouTube and give them a follow, give them a subscribe, and tune in live. The chat is always live for What's on Joe Mind. It's always live. There's always fun people. You get great drop-ins. You see a lot of names, people that you end up seeing on G.I. Joe Twitter, people that work in the industry, people that are just super knowledgeable and super friendly. It's a great way to, as we said earlier, just hang. So tune into What's on Joe Mind and get to know Mike Irizarry more.
It's Tuesday nights at 9:05.
Tuesday nights. Now that's 9:05 Eastern time. Tuesday nights, 9:05 Eastern time. Every Tuesday, be there. You're always going to have fun. And the great thing is, when you're watching, you don't have to stick around for 2 to 3 hours. You can drop in and say hello and leave.
I mean, we don't want to encourage that. We'd rather people come and stay a while.
That is true. We do.
I understand 2 hours plus is a big commitment. I'm not saying that you got to do that. Watch at your leisure, but hang around for a little.
Hang around, or at least leave your browser on, so they get the full view statistic. Open up
actually
multiple windows.
We're very weird in YouTube world. We're very strange. In that we don't have the biggest audience, but our retention numbers are through the roof. Yeah. Once we get you, we tend to hold on to you.
That's great. Well, there's a lot of good reasons for it, man, and you are the primary one. Mike, any final parting thoughts on Beachhead?
On Beach, well,
and if someone were to say to you, I can't imagine anyone saying I don't like Beachhead. I really can't, because he is an absolute banger of a character, and we're talking 86. We didn't even take any time to look into his other looks. I do think his V2 look is absolutely frightening, but there's no reason
it's not bad. He just looks like a cobra.
It's weird. But if there was someone who was like, there's something about, I'm not sold on Beachhead, what would you say your favorite aspect of the Beachhead figure from 86 is?
Well, he's pretty universal. Like, Beachhead works in any situation. He's dressed for, forest, jungle battles, but he's got that mask, so it looks like he might be a polar guy or a tundra guy. He's in the command structure, so even if your team needs a leader, fine. He looks cool piloting vehicles, so you can put him in a Devilfish or a Skyhawk, or
looks great on a Devilfish,
right? Or an Ostriker or whatever. And he just works. He's just, aesthetically speaking, he is one of the most. He's one of the best designed Joes, I think, from that first half Or really, I mean, honestly, considering what came in the second half from the entire vintage O-ring line.
You're right.
You know, when I'm cataloging these things, I always think of that vintage line as being in 3 parts, right? Like 82 through 85 is kind of one set, and then we turned a page from 86 to say 89, maybe 90, and then everything after 90.
Mm-hmm. It's like it's up to Cobra Law.
Well, 80 he'd have been 80. Those guys have been released in 86.
Cobra Law was 86?
Yeah.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I take that back then.
Or I'm sorry, no, they were 87.
Yeah.
But still, 86. There's when they changed the card, I think there was a very distinct shift in aesthetics.
Yeah.
But Beachhead, who came in 1986, was still very, very military. He was very much a grounding aspect for everything that came after him.
He's legit.
So he's a touchstone character for a lot of folks in that way.
I agree, Mike. You've said it well. You say it with that beautiful baritone voice. Just mesmerizes me. Makes me want to be a better podcaster, better broadcaster.
Well, you know, there's something to be said for God-given gifts.
It's well, you use it well, my friend. I want to say thank you so much for joining us this week. This has been a long time coming. You can finally stop guilt tripping me when I join your show.
Look,
I am so happy to have you on Joe.
It is not guilt tripping, Joe. It is not, because you said way back when you started the You on Joe series, you approached me.
Well,
I
wanted to nurture my craft like a fine wine so I could get better, you know?
And you said, hey,
yeah,
Mike, you need to come on. You need to talk about the one thing that you do with G.I. Joe that, I mean, because really, the easy answer is I've been doing a podcast for 13 years now. It's really the thing, right? But, you know, I decided instead I'm going to go with my weird, wacky collection of 153 beachheads and counting.
That's the right answer.
But, you know, so you started the You on Joe thing, what, 2 years ago?
No. A year ago. About a year, about 14 months ago.
I think it's longer than that.
No. It's about 14 months
ago.
Check the
tape.
I'll check the tapes because I remember I had the thought when I was on a trip to New York. And I remember when that was.
You say that, and it's true because it's around the time I was starting my current job.
Yeah.
So I get.
I was in New York in the fall right before my wife broke her ankle, and that was a year ago.
Jesus.
Yeah, I was hammered in a bar, and I went, "You on Joe?" That's absolutely true.
I mean, and then one of the bar patrons slapped you.
Yeah.
But
they're like, "Don't get out of here."
She just didn't understand what you were talking about.
Yeah, get out of here.
You weren't.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, you're right. Wait a minute.
You weren't.
I didn't even mean it.
You weren't making a move.
Oh my God.
She just didn't understand.
Mike, I swear to God, I didn't think of that way as it just came out of my mouth, but you're right. Yeah, that's even funnier. That's a good rewrite. Hold on, can we take that joke again? I was in a bar and I said, "You on Joe?" And so she slapped me and I said, "Oh, that's a great name for a show."
See, that's not taking the joke again. That's just you taking credit for the joke.
No. That's a take it from the top. It's a writer's room, Mike. We're all contributing. It's not a competition.
Okay.
We're not counting beachheads.
I mean, I would hope not, because
counting
would be done pretty quick.
Counting beachheads should become a thing. I want to try to make that a thing. Whenever someone's like, I got a better TV than you. I'm taller than you. I'm stronger than you. Hey man, hey. We're not counting beachheads here. Can we all get along?
Right.
Yeah.
Because then you can say that, well, how many beachheads do you have? And they'll be like, they'll think they're really happy. They'll say like, I got 4. It's like, oh, 4. Huh?
Yeah. And you are the Milton Berle of beachheads. You pull out just enough to win.
That's right.
Yeah.
Like if somebody says they got 4, I'll show them 8.
Well, I got 8. Sure.
Just enough to win convincingly.
Yeah. Oh my God, I know a dude who's got like 15 of them.
Yeah.
Oh, great. This month? Yeah.
I have had months that I got. Yeah.
I love it, man. So yeah, listeners, give What's on Joe Mind, give them a spin. I'm sure you already have, but if it's been a bit since you've revisited them, go back and show them some love because they absolutely deserve it. I think you're a great host, Mike, and a wonderful G.I. Joe expert. And thank you so much for being a part of Joe on Joe this week.
I'm glad that you're finally not ashamed of me enough anymore.
It took a lot
to keep me off of the program. You had my brother on. You talked to him for 6 days.
Yeah. Well, there's lots to talk about there.
And you set that interview up. Like we had already talked about doing this like 4 times. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe I want to talk to Ragtime Rob too. And that was done in like a week.
Well, he's nicer than you, as you said.
This is true.
So it's more pleasant. It's a more pleasant experience.
I am a Boy Scout. I am a wonderful individual. But Ragtime Rob is perhaps the nicest man alive.
Well, Mike, I'm very happy to say this. Now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.
I don't want credit for that joke.